I still have the voicemail my mother left at 3:47 in the morning on October 8th, 2023. 6 minutes and 22 seconds. I've never let anyone else hear it. Tonight, I'm going to tell you what was on it. Because 7 months later, what she said in those 6 minutes became the only evidence that put my stepfather in federal prison. My name is Catherine Donnelly. Most people call me Kate. I am 51 years old, and for 23 years I have been a special agent with the IRS Criminal Investigation Division, Boston Field Office, working out of the John F. Kennedy Federal Building and Government Center. I investigate wire fraud, tax evasion, money laundering, and a category of crime the agency calls elder financial exploitation, which is the polite federal name for what happens when a member of someone's own family decides to take their savings while they are still alive. I have built 28 criminal referrals in my career. 9 of them ended in federal prison sentences. I am very good at what I do. I knew the moment I opened that voicemail at 6:15 on the morning of October 8th that I was listening to a federal case being built in real time. I also knew that the woman building it, without realizing she was building it, was my mother, Margaret Frances O'Brien Pelletier, and that I would never be allowed to investigate it myself. My mother was born in 1956 in Dorchester, Massachusetts. She was the youngest of 4. She taught 4th grade at Squantum Elementary in Quincy from 1978 until she retired in 2018. 40 years, 2 months, 11 days. Her ex-students still send her Christmas cards. After her funeral, 3 of them showed up at the wake, in their 40s now, holding the cards she had written to them when they were 9 years old. My father, Patrick Donnelly, was a Boston Fire Department lieutenant, Engine 5. He had a cardiac event on shift on July 4, 1982, fighting a 4-alarm fire in the theater district. He was 33 years old. I was 8. My mother was 26. She raised me alone for 26 years before she met Richard Pelletier. I had silenced my phone at 11 p.m. on October 7th, 2023. I was in the middle of a federal grand jury preparation week, the 3rd sleep-deprived week of a case against a Methuen-based payroll company. I went to bed at midnight. My phone was face down. When I picked it up at 6:15 the next morning, there were 3 missed calls and a voicemail, all from my mother, all within an 11-minute window. The voicemail was 6 minutes and 22 seconds long, which is unusual. My mother left voicemails of 45 seconds, maximum. I sat at the kitchen counter of my house on East 8th Street in South Boston. I'd not yet made coffee. I pressed play. 6 minutes and 22 seconds later, I closed the laptop, opened a new note in the secure encrypted application I use at work, and started typing what I had just heard. What I had just heard was the beginning of a wire fraud case worth $1.4 million. My mother met Richard Pelletier at the funeral of his brother in February 2007. The brother, Joseph Pelletier, had taught alongside my mother at Squantum Elementary for 18 years. He died of pancreatic cancer at 54. My mother went to the wake out of professional obligation. Richard, then 56, sales manager at Pelletier Lincoln Mercury in Quincy, was standing in a receiving line. They spoke for 9 minutes. He called her 3 weeks later. They married on June 21, 2008, at St. Bridget's Church in South Boston. Father Sean O'Connor, who had baptized me in 1974 and would later officiate at my mother's funeral 15 years and 4 months later, performed the ceremony. My daughter Tessa, then 9 years old, was the flower girl. I walked my mother down the aisle. I liked him. I want to be honest about that. For 12 years, I'd liked Richard Pelletier. He was attentive. He took my mother to Cape Cod every August for 2 weeks. He held her elbow when she walked on uneven sidewalks. He remembered the name of every one of her former students that she mentioned. He came to Thanksgiving and brought a bottle of Connemara whiskey for me, knowing it was my favorite. He sent my daughter Tessa a check every birthday for $50 until she was 25 years old. He told me, at her wedding in 2021, that he considered her his granddaughter. This is how it works. This is how federal cases against family members are built. The men who steal from elderly women are, almost always, men who once made everyone around the elderly woman like them. I have prosecuted 6 of these cases in my career. I should have recognized the pattern. I did not, because the pattern walks in through the front door carrying a bottle of Connemara. Richard had been at Pelletier Lincoln Mercury since 1986. His father had started the dealership in 1968 on Southern Artery in Quincy, where it still stands. By 2008, Richard was running the sales floor. He was a good sales manager. He grossed $700,000 a year in commissions in 2015, his best year. He paid for a mortgage refinance on my mother's house on Bayside Road in Squantum in 2012, added his name to the deed, paid off the remaining $92,000 over 4 years. He did not ask for a prenuptial agreement. My mother did not ask for one either. In March 2020, Pelletier Lincoln Mercury underwent what their compliance documents called a routine financial audit. The audit was conducted by the manufacturer, Lincoln Mercury North America, and it was not routine. The audit took 14 weeks. It concluded on June 19, 2020. The settlement was sealed. Richard agreed to retire effective July 1, 2020 at age 68, with 3 months of severance and a non-disparagement clause. I learned about the retirement from my mother in a phone call. I learned about the audit 8 months later, in February 2021, when a contact at the State Attorney General's office mentioned it in a different context. I did not push. My mother told me Richard had wanted to retire. My mother believed it. She believed it for 2 years and 4 months. What I learned later, after the federal subpoenas, after Special Agent Maya Brennan ran the indices on Pelletier Lincoln Mercury's compliance file, was this. The audit had identified 3 things. First, a pattern of dealer-financed loans to customers with documented insufficient credit, where Richard had personally signed the override on 41 transactions over 31 months. Second, a kickback arrangement with an extended warranty vendor that paid Richard a personal commission of 3% on every warranty sold, undisclosed to the dealership. Third, and this is the part that mattered to me later, a pattern of recommending elderly customers to a financial planning firm in Braintree, owned by Richard's cousin Dennis Pelletier, with whom Richard had a referral agreement worth $12,000 per converted client. The settlement was sealed. The Massachusetts Division of Banks was not notified. The federal authorities were not notified. Lincoln Mercury North America did not want the publicity. Richard kept his MA insurance license. He kept his Series 6 investment representative license, which I did not know he had until 2023. He kept the cousin in Braintree. In April 2020, 3 months before the forced retirement, Richard had begun moving my mother's money. He did not do it in a way that an outside observer would have caught. He did it the way the men in my cases always do. Slowly. With paperwork that looked routine. With my mother's signature on every page. In April 2020, my mother had 3 accounts. A Vanguard rollover IRA from her teacher's pension, approximately $811,000 at that time. A Fidelity brokerage account for my father's death benefit, invested 42 years earlier, approximately $447,000. A joint checking account at Eastern Bank with Richard, approximately $28,000. On April 14, 2020, Richard had her sign a power of attorney. The document was prepared by a paralegal at a Quincy estate firm that Dennis Pelletier referred clients to. The POA was a durable financial power of attorney. It gave Richard authority to act on behalf of Margaret F. Pelletier in all financial transactions, including but not limited to brokerage account transfers, retirement account rebalancing, and beneficiary designations. My mother signed it because Richard told her it was so he could help with the accounts, since her eyesight was getting bad. My mother's eyesight was fine. She read large print novels. She drove until she was 64. The POA went into a fireproof box in the basement of the house on Bayside Road. My mother forgot she had signed it. Until October 7th, 2023, at 3:46 a.m. when she found a copy of it in a manila envelope inside Richard's nightstand. That is when she made the call. On January 11th, 2021, Richard took my mother to Eastern Bank at 605 Hancock Street in Quincy to open a new joint account. The branch manager, Diane Mariotti, processed the paperwork. My mother had been a customer at that branch since 1996. Diane had attended my mother's wedding in 2008. Diane did not ask questions when Richard's name appeared on the new account because Richard's name had been on the existing checking account since 2008, and joint accounts between spouses were routine. The new account was called a Premier Savings Account. It paid 1.1% interest. It had a debit card. Most importantly, it accepted incoming wire transfers from Vanguard, Fidelity, and other brokerages, and it accepted them without holds because the underlying account holder, my mother, had a 15-year history with the bank. 2 weeks later, on January 25, 2021, Richard logged into my mother's Vanguard account using credentials she had given him. He requested a rebalancing. He moved $76,000 from her IRA bond allocation into what Vanguard's interface called a settlement account, a holding pattern that took 3 business days. On day 3, he transferred that money to the new Eastern Bank Premier Savings Account. He repeated this transaction 47 times between January 25, 2021, and September 14, 2023. The amounts ranged from $12,000 to $142,000. The total was $887,000. Each transaction was under the Vanguard reporting threshold. Each transaction was technically authorized by the POA my mother had signed in April 2020. I learned about the joint account in December 2021. My mother mentioned it on a Sunday phone call. She said, "Richard set up a high-yield savings account for emergencies, so we don't have to touch the retirement money." I did not ask the follow-up question, what emergencies? I did not ask why she had not mentioned it earlier in the year. I assumed it was routine financial planning. I had cases. I had a daughter getting married in 8 months. I was teaching a continuing education course at Bunker Hill Community College on Wednesday nights. I learned later, after the conviction, that my mother had been told the Premier Savings Account contained around $50,000. She'd never been shown the monthly statement. Richard managed the account through online banking. The paper statements went to a P.O. box in Quincy that my mother did not know existed. The account had a maximum balance in October 2023 of $897,000. Of that, my mother had personally spent $0. She had withdrawn nothing. She had been told, when she occasionally asked, that the account was growing. It was, just not for her. In April 2022, Richard moved the Fidelity brokerage. The Fidelity account was harder. It was originally a death benefit, and the beneficiary structure was complicated by my mother having designated me as the contingent beneficiary in 1986, when I was 12 years old. Richard had her sign a beneficiary update on April 19, 2022. The new primary beneficiary was Richard Pelletier. The new contingent beneficiary was Richard's cousin Dennis Pelletier. I was removed. My mother did not tell me this. I was not on the account. I had no reason to check. She would not have remembered signing it. It was the second to last document on the timeline. The last one was the second account in Quincy. Between January 2022 and September 2023, I noticed 5 things about my mother that I attributed at the time to age. She was 65 years old in 2022. She had been a smoker until she was 40. She had been treated for atrial fibrillation since 2015. Her cardiologist at Boston Medical Center, Dr. Nadia Hassan, was managing the AFib well with apixaban and a beta blocker. Her quarterly check-ins were unremarkable. The 5 things. 1. Phone calls got shorter. From the 45 minutes we used to talk on Sunday afternoons, down to 15 minutes by mid-2022, down to 8 by spring 2023. 2. She stopped initiating calls. By summer 2023, I was the only one dialing. 3. When I asked about money, she changed the subject. Not awkwardly, fluently. 4. She stopped going to her book club at Squantum Library. Margaret had been a member since 1991. She told me she had lost interest. 5. She started in conversations deferring to Richard on routine decisions she had always handled herself. What restaurant to go to for my birthday? What time to visit Tessa in Somerville? Whether to drive to Cape Cod for the August trip? I attributed all 5 of these to her age. I attributed them to the AFib medication. I attributed them to grief over losing Joe Pelletier, even though that had been 15 years earlier. I attributed them to anything other than what was actually happening, which was that the woman who raised me alone for 26 years was being systematically managed by the man who had married her. In June 2023, I drove out to Bayside Road for a Sunday dinner. My mother had lost 12 pounds since I had seen her at Christmas. Her skin was gray. She was wearing a sweater I had given her in 2017, and it hung off her like a bedsheet. Richard was attentive. He cut her chicken into small pieces. He brought her water without asking. He poured her a half glass of wine when she had always had a full glass with dinner since I was a child. I asked her, after Richard went into the kitchen, if she was sleeping. She said, "I'm tired, Kate. I do not know why. I am just tired." I went home that night and made an appointment to take her to Dr. Hassan in the second week of July. The appointment was made through Richard, who was managing my mother's calendar. He confirmed the appointment with me by text on July 6th. The appointment was canceled by Richard on July 7th. He told me my mother had a head cold and they would reschedule. They did not reschedule. By August, Dr. Hassan's office had no record of any further contact. In late September 2023, my mother left a voicemail on my phone at 6 p.m. on a Wednesday. The voicemail said, "Kate, I want to talk to you about something when you have a free hour, just us. No, Rick. Call me back." I called her back 45 minutes later. Richard answered. He said my mother was in the shower. He said she had been napping all afternoon. He said he would have her call me back. She did not call me back for 9 days. When she finally did, on October 5th, the conversation lasted 11 minutes. She told me she loved me. She told me Tessa was a wonderful daughter. She told me about a book she had been reading. She did not bring up what she had wanted to talk about. I assumed she'd forgotten. I went back to my grand jury case. 3 nights later at 3:47 a.m., my phone rang. 3 times. I will tell you what was on the voicemail. I will not play it for you. I will never play it for anyone outside of a federal courtroom. But I will tell you what she said, in the order she said it. The voicemail began with my mother's voice, low and unsteady, apologizing for the hour. She said she had not slept. She said Richard was asleep in the next room. She said she was speaking quietly and would have to stop if he woke up. She said she had been in his nightstand looking for an antacid. She said she had found in a manila envelope behind a stack of receipts a document she did not remember signing. It was a power of attorney, dated April 14th, 2020. It was her signature. She said it was her signature, but she did not remember being in the lawyer's office that day. She did not remember discussing it. She said she remembered going to a doctor's appointment that morning and Richard taking her to lunch and signing some paperwork at a real estate office that he said was about refinancing the house. She had not refinanced the house. Then she said the 4 transactions. She listed them by amount and date in the order she had found them in another envelope under the nightstand. $87,500 to Vanguard Sweep, August 22nd. $112,000 to Vanguard Sweep, August 29th. $65,700 to a Quincy savings bank account she had never opened, September 7th. $41,000 to the same Quincy savings bank account, September 20th. She said the account number for the Quincy savings bank account aloud. She said it slowly. She said it twice. She said, "I think your stepfather is taking the money, Kate. I think he has been taking the money for a long time. I am very scared. I do not know what to do." She said the Fidelity beneficiary had been changed. She said she had found a confirmation letter dated April 2022. She said her name had been removed as the controlling beneficiary. She said Dennis Pelletier was now the contingent. She did not know who that was. She thought it was Richard's brother. It was his cousin. She said she wanted me to come over on Tuesday. She said she would not say anything to Richard. She said she would tell him she was going to a doctor's appointment, and I should meet her at the Quincy Center MBTA station at 10:30 a.m., and we would go for coffee and talk in person. She closed the voicemail with this. She said, "I love you, baby. Don't tell Rick I called. Wait until you can come in person. I am going to put the phone in the closet now." The voicemail ended at 3:53 a.m. I listened to it 17 times that morning before I called Eleanor Quinn, my colleague at the Boston field office, and told her I needed her to listen to something. I listened to it once more, with her, on a secure line at 8:45 a.m. Eleanor said, very quietly, "Kate, you are a witness. You cannot investigate this. You need to talk to Beaulieu." I said, "I know. I did not call Beaulieu that day. I called my mother. She did not answer. I called her 3 more times that morning. She did not answer until 2 p.m. She sounded better. She said she was glad I had called. She said Richard had taken her to brunch at Marina Bay and they had had a wonderful morning. She did not mention the voicemail. She did not mention what was in it. She acted as though she had not made the call. I drove to Quincy on Wednesday, October 11th. I drove to Bayside Road on Wednesday, October 11th, 2023, arriving at 1:15 p.m. Richard was not home. My mother had asked him to go to the hardware store in Braintree to pick up a furnace filter, knowing the trip would take 90 minutes. She made me tea. She brought me a cardboard box of documents she had been collecting in a kitchen drawer since June. My mother sat across from me at the kitchen table where I had eaten cereal as a child. She told me, in the same low, unsteady voice from the voicemail, what she had not been able to say on the phone. She told me she had known for nearly a year that something was wrong. She told me she had not known how to bring it up to me because she was ashamed. She said the word ashamed 3 times. She told me she did not want me to fix it. She wanted me to tell her what to do. I told her she needed to talk to an attorney on Friday. I gave her the name of 3 estate litigators in Boston. I told her she should freeze the joint account that afternoon while Richard was out. I told her she should change the locks on the house. I told her she should come back to South Boston with me that day and stay with me for the weekend. She said she could not. She said she did not want to confront him until she had spoken to an attorney. She said Richard had been good to her for 12 years, and she owed him the dignity of hearing it from her first. She said she would call the attorney on Friday. She said she would come stay with me on Saturday. She said, "I just need a few more days, baby. I will be fine." She walked me to my car at 3:45 p.m. Richard pulled into the driveway as I was backing out. He waved. He smiled. He called me Kate, the nickname he had used for 15 years. I waved back. I drove home. 7 days later, on Wednesday, October 18th at 11:14 p.m., Richard called me. He said my mother had collapsed in the kitchen. He said the ambulance was already there. He said he was driving to Beth Israel Deaconess. I left South Boston at 11:23 p.m. I arrived at Beth Israel at 11:51. My mother was unconscious in the cardiac ICU. The on-call cardiologist said she had had a sustained ventricular tachycardia event. Her heart had been in arrhythmia for an estimated 45 minutes before Richard found her. She did not regain consciousness. She died at 6:42 a.m. on October 19th, 2023. I held her hand for the 4 hours and 40 minutes between when the cardiologist said she would not recover and when the monitor went flat. Richard sat in the corner of the ICU room. He prayed quietly. He cried. He held her other hand. He told her he loved her. I did not look at him. The funeral was on Sunday, October 22nd at St. Bridget's. Father O'Connor officiated. Richard delivered a eulogy. He used the word blessing 11 times. I counted. I sat in the front pew with my daughter Tessa, my son-in-law Way, and the box of documents from my mother's kitchen drawer, which I had retrieved on Friday night when Richard had been at the funeral home. I did not open the box for 3 weeks. On Tuesday, November 14th, 2023, I called Special Agent in Charge Thomas Beaulieu's executive assistant at the IRSCI Boston field office and requested a closed-door meeting. The meeting took place on Thursday, November 16th at 4 p.m. in Beaulieu's 8th-floor office at the JFK Federal Building. I brought the voicemail on an encrypted thumb drive. I brought the box of documents. I brought a 5-page memo I had written over the previous weekend, summarizing the evidence chain and identifying the federal violations I believed had occurred. I brought my federal credentials and laid them on his desk. I told Beaulieu I had a conflict of interest. I told him my mother had been the victim of what appeared to be a multi-year wire fraud scheme by my stepfather. I told him I could not investigate the case. I told him I could not be involved in the investigation. I asked him to convene the conflict waiver process and assign the case to a separate agent. Beaulieu was quiet for about 90 seconds. He had known me for 19 years. He had hired me. He had been at my mother's funeral in the back row in a dark suit. He said, "Kate, are you sure you want to file this?" I said, "Yes." He filed the conflict notification with the Treasury Inspector General for Tax Administration on Monday, November 20th. The waiver was approved on Friday, December 8th. The case was formally opened on December 11th, 2023, and assigned to Special Agent Maya Brennan, who I had worked alongside for 6 years but never on the same case. Maya called me on December 12th. She asked me one question, whether I would consent to a recorded interview as the complainant. I said yes. The interview took place on December 15th in a conference room I had never been in. It lasted 4 hours and 20 minutes. I gave Maya the voicemail, the documents, my memo, my mother's phone, my mother's iPad, the credentials to my mother's email, and a written authorization to subpoena any records on my behalf as the personal representative of her estate. I did not see Maya again for 14 months. The investigation took the time it took. Subpoenas to Eastern Bank, Quincy Savings, Vanguard, Fidelity, Pelletier Lincoln Mercury, the law firm that had drafted the POA and the funeral home that had handled the death benefit. Forensic imaging of 3 laptops and 4 phones, sworn interviews with 17 witnesses, including Diane Mariotti, Dennis Pelletier, Dr. Hassan, Father O'Connor, and the paralegal in Quincy who had drafted the POA. The federal indictment was unsealed on May 14, 2024. 23 counts of wire fraud, 4 counts of false filings on joint tax returns for 2020 through 2023, 1 count of elder financial abuse under the federal statute. Richard was arrested on June 4, 2024, at the dealership his cousin still owned. He was released on his own recognizance the same afternoon. The trial began on Monday, March 17, 2025, in Courtroom 17 of the United States District Court for the District of Massachusetts. Honorable Patricia Cahill presiding. The lead prosecutor was Assistant United States Attorney David Liang. The defense was Brett McAllister, a Quincy criminal attorney who had defended 4 municipal officials in the past decade. The voicemail was a battle. McAllister filed a pretrial motion to exclude it on 3 grounds: spousal privilege, hearsay, and a chain of custody challenge on the device. A USA Liang argued the privilege did not apply because the communication was not between the spouses. The hearsay exception of statement against interest, combined with dying declaration, both applied, and the chain of custody had been preserved through my immediate handoff to Special Agent Brennan in December 2023. Judge Cahill ruled on March 19th that the voicemail would be admitted. On Monday, March 24, 2025, at 11:17 a.m., A. USA Liang stood at the prosecution table, pressed a key on a laptop, and the voicemail my mother had recorded at 3:47 a.m. on October 8, 2023, played in open federal court for 6 minutes and 22 seconds. The jury heard my mother's voice. They heard the 4 transactions. They heard the account number she repeated twice. They heard her say she thought her husband was taking the money. They heard her say she was scared. They heard the closing line. "I love you, baby. Don't tell Rick I called." I sat in the second row, on the left, in a navy suit. My daughter Tessa sat on my left. My son-in-law Wei sat on her left. Father O'Connor sat behind me. Eleanor Quinn sat behind him. Richard sat at the defense table. I did not look at Richard during the 6 minutes and 22 seconds. I looked at the back of Judge Cahill's monitor. I counted the ceiling tiles. I counted 96 tiles before the audio ended. The jury deliberated for 7 hours and 12 minutes. They returned a verdict on Tuesday, March 25th at 4:07 p.m. Guilty on 23 of 23 wire fraud counts. Guilty on 4 of 4 false filing counts. Guilty on the elder abuse count. Richard did not react. McAllister put a hand on his shoulder. The marshals removed him through the side door. I called Beaulieu from the courthouse steps at 4:41 p.m. I said, "It is done." He said, "Kate, your mother would be proud." The sentencing hearing was on Thursday, May 8, 2025, in the same courtroom. Judge Cahill heard victim impact statements first. I delivered mine. It was 341 words long. I had written it in 1 draft. I did not cry. I did not raise my voice. I read it from a printed page. I told the court that my mother had spent 40 years teaching 9-year-olds to read and write. I told the court that on the last morning of her conscious life, she had recorded a 6-minute summary of a federal financial crime in a closet while her husband was sleeping because she trusted that her daughter would know what to do with it. I told the court that she had been right to trust me. I told the court that the 4 years requested by the prosecution were appropriate. Judge Cahill sentenced Richard Pelletier to 48 months at the Federal Correctional Institution in Devens, Massachusetts, with 3 years of supervised release. She ordered restitution of $987,000 to my mother's estate, with 75% disbursed to me as personal representative, and 25% placed in a Massachusetts Elder Protective Services Fund. Richard surrendered on June 2, 2025. He is currently inmate number 8, 5391-038. His projected release date is May 20th, 2029. He will be 78 years old. I retired from the IRS Criminal Investigation Division on September 30th, 2025, after 24 years and 7 months. I joined Suffolk University Law School in November as a senior lecturer in forensic accounting. I teach 2 courses. One is called Elder Financial Abuse, Detection and Prosecution. 36 second-year students are enrolled. Most of them will become CPAs. 3 will become federal agents. The voicemail in encrypted form is held at the IRS Criminal Investigation Training Facility in Glencoe, Georgia, as a case study in evidence preservation. It is one of 9 evidentiary recordings used in the new agent training curriculum. The other 8 cases all began with sworn complainants. Mine is the only one that began with a voicemail recorded by the victim in the dark, 11 days before her death. My mother knew. She did not know everything. She did not know about the POA in April 2020. She did not know about the Vanguard account credentials. She did not know about Dennis Pelletier and Braintree. But she knew what she had heard in the night, and she knew where to put it, and she knew who to tell. She gave me 6 minutes and 22 seconds, recorded in a closet at 3:47 in the morning. I gave her 13 weeks of federal investigation, 8 days of trial, and 1 sentencing hearing. She got 4 years for the man who took her savings and made her ashamed to call her daughter. The math is not equal. It will never be equal. But she knew. She told me what she had. She trusted me to do the math. That is what mothers do. That is what daughters do. That is the whole story.